In January 1959, 9 young adventurers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on what was meant to be a routine winter expedition through the northern Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. All of them were experienced hikers, trained in survival, and familiar with the brutality of the cold. Their leader was Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov, 23 years old, an engineering student known for his meticulous preparation and quiet intensity. Friends described him as unflappable, almost stoic, but fiercely protective of his team. The group he assembled included 7 men and 2 women, all between 20 and 24 years old, bonded by shared passion and endurance. They planned a 300-kilometer ski trek to reach Mount Otorten, a peak whose name in the local Mansi language ominously translates to "Don't go there." The goal was to reach it, document the route, and return to the town of Vizhai. Upon completion, they would receive their Grade 3 hiking certification, the highest level in the Soviet system. The team consisted of Igor Dyatlov, leader, radio engineering student, meticulous planner; Zenaida Kolmogorova, energetic, determined, with a reputation for resilience; Lyudmila Dubanina, sharp-minded, tough and outspoken, often the group's moral compass; Rustem Slobodin, calm, athletic, trained in long-distance skiing; Yuri Doroshenko, tall, powerful, cheerful, known for bravery; Yuri Krivonishenko, the joker of the group, with a wry sense of humor and love for music; Alexander Kolovatov, quiet and analytical, a physics student; Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, the thinker, intelligent and philosophical; Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest, 37, a war veteran and last-minute addition to the team. They began their journey from Sverdlovsk, now Yekaterinburg, on January 25, 1959. Their route would take them by train to Ivdel, then by truck to Vizhai, the last inhabited settlement before the wilderness. They spent the night there, laughing and preparing, leaving their final photographs full of energy and optimism. From Vizhai, they skied into the frozen expanse, forest thinning into white desolation, where wind sculpted the snow into frozen waves. The last trace of civilization vanished behind them. The journey begins. The early stages went smoothly. Their diaries and camera rolls, found later at the site, paint a vivid portrait of camaraderie. They sang songs, teased one another, recorded temperatures and snow depth with scientific precision. At night, they huddled in their tent, sharing jokes and rationed bread. On January 28th, one of them, Yuri Yudin, fell ill and was forced to turn back due to severe joint pain. The others comforted him, unaware he would become the only survivor. His departure turned 9 into 8, then 9 again, counting Zolotaryov's addition. But the composition remained 9 for the fatal leg. Yudin's last memory of them was Dyatlov smiling and waving, skis already slicing the powder. "We'll be back soon," he said. From there, the group pushed deeper into the Ural wilderness. The forest grew darker, the weather harsher. Temperatures dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius, winds slicing through clothing like knives. Yet their spirits remained high. Their diaries show humor, optimism, and unity. Then, on January 31st, they reached the edge of the tree line near Kholat Syakhl, the mountain of the dead. The final camp. On February 1st, the hikers began their ascent toward the pass. Their intended route veered toward Otorten, but worsening weather and poor visibility pushed them off course. They found themselves climbing the slopes of Kholat Syakhl instead. By evening, they decided to camp on an open slope, a decision that remains one of the greatest mysteries of the case, They could have descended just 1 kilometer to the safety of the forest, where trees would shield them from the wind. Instead, they pitched their tent in the open, exposed to brutal gusts. Investigators later speculated Dyatlov made the call deliberately to practice emergency camping or to avoid losing the altitude they had gained. It was a leader's choice, rational but fatal. They set up their single large tent, reinforced with skis and poles, then cut into the snow for insulation. Dinner was modest, slices of pork fat, biscuits and cocoa. In their final photos, they are smiling, joking, tired but content. Their last diary entry, written around 9 p.m., reads simply, "The wind is strong. We are tired. Tomorrow, we'll go to Otorten." No one ever saw them alive again. The wind screamed over the Ural peaks like a living thing. It moved through the white wilderness, endless and merciless, carrying whispers that could be mistaken for voices. 9 figures trudged across that frozen world, each breath forming clouds that vanished as quickly as they came. Their skis left a long, perfect line across the snow, a fragile scar across the skin of the mountain. They laughed, sometimes, because laughter was warmth, and warmth was life. Inside their tent at night, the lantern's glow cast trembling shadows on the canvas. Kolmogorova's voice was soft, humming an old Russian tune. Krivonishenko strummed an invisible guitar. Someone passed around a notebook, jotting the day's events, the frostbite, the wind, the endless white. Outside, the snow fell heavier, muting the world. Far beyond, black spruce trees bowed under its weight, their shapes monstrous in the darkness. The mountain had no name here, not really. The Mansi hunters who once roamed these slopes called it Kolatshyakl, the mountain of the dead. But Dyatlov wasn't superstitious. None of them were. They were young, Soviet, logical. The generation that believed everything had an answer, every mystery a reason. So when they found themselves off course that night, he decided to make camp on the slope itself. "Better here," he might have said, voice lost to the wind. "We'll find the route again in the morning." They pitched their tent against the snow. Inside, they arranged their sleeping bags in 2 neat rows, like a small barracks. Someone cooked porridge, someone else mended a glove. Cameras clicked, final snapshots of life, unaware of their own doom. Outside, the storm gathered. The tent's fabric bulged inward with each gust, creaking like bone. In the darkness above them, something ancient stirred, not seen, not known, but felt. When the wind howled, it carried a note of something unnatural, not merely air through rock, but something resonant, almost vocal. Perhaps only one of them heard it clearly. Perhaps they all did. And when they finally lay down, 9 shadows wrapped in blankets of frost, the night swallowed the tent whole. The wind rose again. Snow fell silently. The mountain waited. When February 12th, 1959 came and went without word from the hikers, no one panicked at first. Dyatlov had told his sports club in Sverdlovsk that delays of a few days were possible. Mountain weather was unpredictable. By February 20th, however, silence had stretched too long. Families of the students began contacting the university, demanding action. Within days, a search party was assembled, made up of students, teachers, and local volunteers. The Soviet authorities soon joined in, first police, then soldiers with helicopters and trained rescue dogs. The search area was immense. Endless white plains broken by scattered forests and jagged peaks. Days passed with no sign. Then, on February 26th, the rescue team spotted something half buried in the snow on the slopes of Kolatshyakl. It was the tent. Investigators approached cautiously. It was collapsed, partially covered in drifted snow. At first, they thought it had been abandoned in haste, but then they saw the slashes. Long, frantic cuts across the fabric. They came from the inside. Inside, everything was strangely ordered. Sleeping bags laid out, boots and clothing left behind. Dyatlov's flashlight still resting on the snow-covered roof. It had been switched off. The footprints surrounding the site deepened the mystery. 9 sets of prints, leading away from the tent in a single file. Most were barefoot or wearing only socks. Some were marked by a single shoe, as if the hikers had fled half-dressed. No prints led back. The line of tracks extended nearly 500 meters down toward a patch of forest at the base of the slope, then vanished into the trees. Rescuers followed them, hearts heavy with dread. The world was white, endless and silent, except for the low moan of the wind. The rescuers trudged uphill, their parkas dusted with frost, their breath forming ghosts that clung to their faces. The snow was deep enough to swallow their knees. Ahead of them, a faint bulge broke the landscape, a shape not quite natural. Over there, someone shouted. The closer they came, the clearer it became. The shape was a tent, sunken and half buried, its poles twisted like ribs. A tattered corner flapped weakly in the wind. They brushed away snow, revealing the faded canvas, and the sight made the lead searcher's stomach turn. The tent's walls were slashed open, but the tiers were jagged, irregular, made by trembling hands. Inside lay chaos frozen in time. Boots scattered, a camera overturned. Pieces of bread, a journal, a map still folded. No one would leave their tent like this, not hikers of Dyatlov's skill. Then one of the men noticed something. Faint depressions leading away into the white. Footprints, human, barefoot. They followed. Step after step, the trail descended the slope, fading and reappearing, sometimes only visible where the wind hadn't swept clean. The searchers moved silently, aware they were walking the last path of 9 souls. After half a kilometer, the forest loomed, a line of black spears against the snow. The footprints led straight into it. At the edge of the trees, one rescuer stopped. There, just visible through the branches, was a dark mass, the remains of a campfire, long dead. They approached. The trees above were scarred, branches broken as if someone had tried to climb or tear them down. Beneath the cedar tree lay the first 2 bodies. Both were barefoot. Both wore only their underwear. Their hands were burned, their faces frozen in the stillness of agony. Snow had already begun to fall again, erasing the tracks behind the rescuers as they stared into that unnatural stillness. The mountain gave nothing. No sound but wind, no life but the whisper of trees. Whatever had happened that night, it had driven 9 rational, disciplined people into the snow, unshod and terrified, into the waiting dark. What they found froze even the veterans of the Ural rescue teams. The tent was collapsed, its top crusted with ice, the canvas sliced open from the inside. Inside lay order in chaos. Sleeping bags half opened, boots still lined up, food laid out as if dinner had been interrupted. The hikers' journals and cameras rested undisturbed, their last entries cheerful and mundane. And yet, not a single person remained. The rescuers fanned out from the tent, scanning the slope for any sign of life. The faint trail of footprints led them downhill, then vanished among the trees. There, at the edge of the forest, beneath a towering cedar, they found the first 2 bodies. Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko were lying side by side, barefoot, dressed only in their underwear. Nearby, A small campfire had melted a shallow crater into the snow, a desperate, fleeting attempt to fight the cold. The cedar above them was stripped of branches for nearly 5 meters, bark torn off in clumps, as though the men had climbed it in panic or to see something on the slope above. Their hands were burned, blackened, their fingers frozen mid-reach. They had tried to live. The searchers followed faint traces leading from the cedar back toward the tent. After some 300 meters, they found 3 more bodies scattered in a shallow line. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, positioned as if they had been crawling, struggling to return to camp. Dyatlov lay on his back, fists clenched, his face turned toward the tent. Kolmogorova's frozen expression suggested exhaustion and terror. Slobodin's skull bore a small fracture, the kind that might have come from falling or from something far worse. 5 were now accounted for. 4 remained lost in the snow. Weeks passed before they were found. The thaw of early May revealed the remaining bodies in a ravine, buried beneath 4 meters of snow. Dubinina, Thibaut Brignol, Kolevatov, and Zolotaryov had perished together, but their deaths made the mystery darker still. 2 of them suffered massive internal injuries, crushed ribs, shattered skulls, but with no external wounds. Dubinina's tongue, eyes, and part of her lips were missing, as if removed post-mortem. Her clothing, along with Zolotaryov's, carried measurable radiation. No animal tracks, no signs of struggle. Only the frozen remnants of 9 lives extinguished in impossible ways. The medical examiners could not agree on a cause. They wrote vague phrases like a powerful force, concussion by an unknown mechanism, and hypothermia complicated by shock. But what force makes people flee their tent half naked into minus 30 degrees Celsius darkness, crushes their bones without breaking skin, and leaves traces of radiation in their clothes? Snow whispered as rescuers moved between the pines. Every few meters, one of them would stop, lean on his ice axe, and listen to the wind, to the creak of trees, to the silence that hung like a curse. Under the cedar, the fire had long gone cold. Charred sticks protruded from the snow like fingers. 2 men lay still beside it, faces ghost pale, hands scorched black. The smell of burned flesh clung faintly to the air. The rescuers said nothing. One of them looked up and saw the branches high above. Broken, splintered, smeared with something dark. They had climbed, desperate, tearing at bark with bare hands. From that height, maybe they saw something. A glow, a movement, a shadow crossing the slope. Farther uphill, 3 more bodies waited in the snow. Dyatlov's frozen eyes seemed fixed on the tent above, as if even in death he was trying to reach it. Kolmogorova's hands were raw, as though she had crawled until the last moment. Slobodin's face was bruised, his hair dusted with frost like powdered glass. The searchers covered them, whispered prayers, and kept moving. It would be months before the final discovery. The snow had buried everything: time, truth, and the remaining 4. When the spring sun softened the ice, they appeared. 4 shapes beneath a hollow in the ravine, twisted together as if they had huddled for warmth. But warmth had not come. One man's ribs were crushed inward, his chest collapsed as if struck by a car. Another's skull was fractured cleanly, a wound with no bruise. Dubinina's face was half gone, her eyes hollow sockets, her tongue missing. Her hands clutched a strip of fabric, perhaps someone's coat, perhaps nothing. A Geiger counter ticked faintly when the soldiers examined their clothes. The readings were small, but enough to send whispers through the camp. Night fell quickly over the site. The trees swayed and creaked. the cold rising like breath from the ground. In the darkness, the rescuers lit a single lantern near the tent's ruins, its glow trembling in the wind. 9 people had fled into the storm from something unseen, and whatever that something was, it had left no tracks, no sound, no trace, only the silence. The bodies had been found, the reports had been written, yet no one, not investigators, not scientists, not the military, could agree on what had truly happened at Dyatlov Pass. The official inquest began in March 1959. Forensic experts, military officers, and state prosecutors assembled in the icy town of Ivdel to examine the evidence. But the deeper they looked, the more reality slipped through their fingers. The facts were irreconcilable. The hikers had fled their tent in bare feet and underwear, cutting their way out rather than unfastening the entrance. Their footprints were calm and deliberate, not panicked. Several had died of hypothermia, yet others showed trauma on par with a car crash. Their clothing carried radiation. No signs of struggle, no indication of another party. And above it all, the tent, standing eerily untouched, snow drifting through the open slashes like time itself had frozen. The autopsies baffled everyone. Pathologist Boris Vozrojdeny described the injuries as comparable to the effect of a shockwave. Dubinina's missing tongue, eyes and lips, first blamed on scavengers, seemed too precise, too clean. Others bore greyish burns on their skin. Locals came forward with unsettling accounts. Mansi hunters reported strange orange orbs in the sky on the night of the tragedy, glowing silently over the mountains. Other witnesses from nearby settlements said they saw the same lights that week. The investigation quickly began to buckle under political weight. Soviet authorities wanted the matter closed before the public grew restless. In May, the official report ended with a single, chilling sentence. The deaths of the hikers were caused by a compelling natural force which they were unable to overcome. No one explained what that compelling force was. The case files were sealed. The area was quietly restricted for years afterward. Those who asked too many questions were warned to stop. Even family members were told to remember them as heroes of the Soviet youth and to let the matter rest. But the matter didn't rest. Theories multiplied, and with each one, the mystery only deepened. Snow drifted over the ravine where the bodies once lay, covering every sign of what had happened. The mountain was silent again, as if it had swallowed its secret whole. In Ivdel, investigators hunched over photographs and maps beneath flickering lamps. The images were stark, black and white bodies against white snow, the tent like a wound in the earth. A colonel exhaled cigarette smoke and muttered, "Avalanche." The others disagreed. The slope was too shallow. The tent stood undisturbed, the poles upright. No debris, no collapsed snowfield. Someone suggested radiation exposure, but the source was unclear. None of the hikers worked in the nuclear industry. The idea of military testing surfaced next. Secret parachute mines, chemical weapons, or a botched missile trial. The region, after all, was near classified Soviet zones. Yet if the explosion theory was true, why were there no burns, no blast craters, no signs of panic in the tracks? One investigator whispered about the Mansi curse, earning a round of exhausted laughter, and one uneasy silence. Then came the infrasound theory, decades later, the idea that low-frequency wind patterns might induce irrational fear, forcing the hikers to flee into the cold. It explained the panic, perhaps, but not the violence, not the radiation, not the crushing injuries. Every answer fractured under its own logic. Every explanation ended where the footprints began, in the snow, vanishing into the forest, Late at night, one investigator remained in the empty office, staring at a photo of the tent. He imagined the moment before it all broke. The wind hammering the canvas, 9 shadows huddled together, something unseen pressing against the thin fabric of their world. What did they hear? What did they see that made them run? Outside, a gust rattled the window panes. He turned off the lamp. The last ember of his cigarette glowed for a moment in the dark, then faded, leaving only the sound of the wind, the same wind that had screamed over the pass that night. Somewhere, out there, under tons of ice and snow, the mountain still waited. By late spring of 1959, the snow had melted, the bodies had been buried, and the Soviet Union had moved on. Officially, the Dyatlov Pass incident was declared a closed case. Unofficially, it became a legend whispered in dormitories, factories, and army barracks. A story of bravery, madness, and something unspeakable in the northern wild. The families received the remains under guarded supervision. They were not permitted to see full autopsy files. Each coffin was sealed. Mourners noticed the strange grey tinge of the skin, the oddly sunken features. Questions were met with silence or polite warning. The site itself was soon labelled off limits. Maps omitted it. Soldiers patrolled nearby valleys. The Mansi avoided it entirely. They said the mountain had taken its payment. Decades passed before the documents resurfaced. In the 1990s, fragments of the case file were declassified. Grainy photographs, half-erased notes, transcripts bearing blacked-out names. Independent investigators and journalists reopened the mystery, poring over every contradictory detail. In 2019, Russia's Prosecutor General's office announced a new investigation. Expectations rose. Perhaps finally, a scientific answer would come. A year later, the new report concluded, once again, avalanche. But experts and mountaineers immediately challenged it. The slope's gradient, the tent's position, the pattern of injuries. None matched a true avalanche. Even with modern modelling, the official conclusion felt like a closing statement written to end conversation, not to reveal truth. Today, more than 60 years later, Dyatlov Pass remains a scar on the map of the Urals. Pilgrims, scientists, and thrill-seekers still visit the site each February, planting small crosses and leaving photographs in the snow. The wind there never stops. The forest is quiet now. The cedar that sheltered the first 2 bodies still stands, its bark scarred but alive. Snow falls in slow spirals, coating the memorial stones left by strangers who whisper prayers in languages the hikers never spoke. Each year, the wind carves their names anew into the drifts: Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, Doroshenko, Dubinina. 9 echoes circling a mountain that no longer answers. Imagine it. The tent faded to threads, the slope unchanged, the same moon rising, the same cold biting through time. Somewhere beneath layers of ice, fragments of fabric and bone remain. Silent witnesses that refuse to speak. The theories still circle like vultures. Avalanche, secret weapons, aliens, madness. None satisfy. Because the truth, whatever it was, happened in the span of minutes. A small, perfect horror sealed by snow and wind. At night, when storms cross the ridge, rescuers say you can hear strange harmonics in the air. A deep, low hum that vibrates through the rock. The same infrasound some scientists once blamed for the terror. Others say it's only memory, trapped wind echoing through the hollow where the tent once stood. In Ivdel's museum, behind a glass case, a rusted stovepipe and a torn piece of canvas rest under weak yellow light. A placard reads, "Found at the last campsite of Igor Dyatlov's group." February 1959. Visitors linger. Some press their palms to the glass, as if warmth might pass through to the other side. Outside, the wind rises. The same endless voice that howled over the mountain that night. And in that wind lives the only certainty left. The mountain keeps its secrets. 9 students went into the wilderness certain of their strength, their science, and their reason. They met something that stripped all of that away. Whether it was nature, accident, or something unknowable, it left behind a story that refuses to end. A reminder that for all our progress, the world still holds places where reason freezes and fear endures.